Go.
Hey.
Hey
That
guys.
working.
Welcome to a brand new episode of Nerd Herd Live. We are going to be doing 3 movie reviews tonight, including the much anticipated and now released Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. And we will also have reviews for Asteroid City. in my head. And No Hard Feelings. We've seen a lot of movies in the last few weeks. We saw Mission Impossible this week as well, which we're not allowed to talk about yet. We will talk about that on our next podcast. I know some of us have strong feelings on it, and you can look at social media to figure out which one of us has more strong feelings about that. But all of that being said, we're going to dive right into it tonight and get started with No Hard Feelings, which stars Jennifer Lawrence and came out last week. Jennifer Lawrence is also a producer on the project. And on that note, I will let Matt set it up for us.
I was about to say, it seems like you're just going straight on into it.
I'm setting up the setup.
Which is what Jennifer Lawrence wants to do in this movie.
I was going to say.
What were you going to say?
I was going to say we forgot to introduce ourselves.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm Matt. So I say we just roll with it. We're all
Let's just roll with it.
Right?
Yeah,
So
we're going to roll with it.
I feel like our
labels
audience,
on us.
you should know us by now. And if not, you will know us by the end.
There we go.
So,
let's do it.
So there we go. No hard feelings. So this is a raunchy sex comedy starring Jennifer Lawrence, and basically she is on the brink of losing her childhood home. And so she hits up Craigslist and finds a wealthy couple who has posted an ad in order to date their 19-year-old son, who's shy and socially awkward, and just, his parents want to give him experience before he goes off to college so that he's prepared. And basically they are offering a car in return for this. And Jennifer Lawrence, she needs a car so she can be an Uber driver. And so she agrees to date this awkward kid. And hijinks ensues, to say the least. And yeah, I really enjoyed it. I felt like it was a fun comedy. I was laughing the whole time. And it hits that sweet spot that I feel like we haven't had in theaters with comedies in a long time. Because it's either we're seeing these giant, big blockbusters or superhero films, these giant action-packed films, or we're seeing these small indie Oscar contenders. And there's really we've lost that middle ground of just comedies, really. And I feel like this hits that sweet spot.
I would agree.
I think that's a good statement.
I found there were a couple of funny one-liners too that really hit close to home depending on your generation as you're watching it. And I know because you look over at the audience and who was laughing at different points, and it was okay, there was the 30s and 40s group, and then there was the older group, and then there was the younger group who were all laughing at different points. But I like the fact that it felt sort of like the old comedies of the late 2000s. To your point, Matt, where it just kind of goes back to simple and not this major, grandiose, giant franchise tentpole film that came out, or something that is very deep and heady, like an Oscar contender. It was just fun. It was just fun. We knew it was going to be, crazy at points. Although I will say the beach scene was unexpected.
You didn't expect it to go that crazy.
I did not expect John Cena on the beach. That's all I'm going to say.
Oh my God.
I think it's funny, just to interject this here. A lot of people have talked about Jennifer Lawrence stealing this kind of unexpected scene or moment from Viggo Mortensen in Eastern Promises, who had this very in your face fight scene, and this is kind of like the female version of that.
Oh yeah,
I think that's a fair comparison.
It's a fair point.
it's very unexpected.
Yeah.
I will say, oh, go ahead.
No, you, Jen.
So I will say for anyone who is squicked out at the age difference, which I kind of was going into it, I would call this a coming of age story more than I would call it a rom-com. So
Yeah.
comedy definitely, but not like a rom-com, which I was kind of worried about.
Right.
Because don't get me wrong, I mean, we see the other way all the time in Hollywood, and that's not good either.
No.
Yeah.
But 32 and 19, just not quite there.
Yeah.
But they made it work, and they made it work in a way that was not nearly as squeaky.
Predator-ish.
Predatory, yeah. Honestly, yeah, predatory. But they made it work.
None of that. Yeah.
They made it work in a way that was not nearly as squicky as I really thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
So more power to them. I mean, it worked out. I loved it.
Yeah.
I had a great time.
Yeah.
Same here. And I think a lot of that is with Jennifer Lawrence, where it's like you like everybody thinks, oh yeah, she's this Oscar winner, and all she does is drama, and she did the Hunger Games and stuff, but it's like she is really funny in this. And I feel like the beach scene alone, like she is one of those people who will like go all out for a scene.
Yeah.
Like, she's like, oh, you want me to do that? I imagine like it's like, oh, you want me to do that? I'll do that. Or it's like, even I could see her like suggesting, it's like, it'd be funnier if I did it this way. And they're like, really? Okay.
Really? You're suggesting that?
Yeah.
And I've been looking through, because there's been obviously a lot of press that was done leading up to that. And I have to imagine that's like an awkward subject to kind of approach with her in an interview setting of like, so how did this scene come about? Like, what was your thoughts when you read it? Did you suggest it? Like, how did that scene? And no one's really touched on that yet, which I found that very interesting from like a press perspective, because I think that's like a very handed to you handline of Jennifer Lawrence talks about the beach scene. Like, and no one's
maybe either one, they're too afraid of bringing it up
to ask.
Yeah. Or they figure it is such an obvious question that, oh, somebody's already asked this and it's already out there. So I'm not going to waste what little time I have on that. So.
No one's asked it yet, though. If someone has, and someone
Jennifer Lawrence, if you are watching, we would love to have you on our live stream. So
yes, or just
put the word out.
Video of you answering this question.
Yeah, just call us.
Just call us.
Just call.
Just reach out. We're here.
We're not going anywhere.
Talk about our socials at the end. We're good.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really Lawrence's performance that makes this movie watchable.
Yeah.
Like it's her not only watchable, but like thoroughly enjoyable,
entertaining.
Yeah. Like it is. It's not just like. It was surprisingly good. Like I think you watched the trailer for this and you're like, this feels.
This is like one of those 80s creepy.
Yeah. The marketing was not great for it.
It wasn't.
It was a missed opportunity, and I would say if you felt weirded out or creeped out watching the trailer, thinking it was going to be like super awkward and inappropriate, that's not the case. Yeah. Don't skip it. It really is worth checking out.
It is. Although I will also say that before, like I had done my kind of research into that, because we've had so many big movies come out the last couple of weeks or are about to come out in the next few weeks, that when this one came across my email, I was like, oh, this is going to like Amazon Prime or it's going to streaming. Like that was just my natural assumption. It didn't feel like something that would be released in the theaters.
Exactly.
That being said, last week was kind of an interesting week. I mean, the biggest title to release was Asteroid City, and this was probably in second. So if you weren't a Wes Anderson fan, this was probably what you were going to see last week if you were going to see something that was a new release.
Yeah. Or just go see Spider-Man again.
Or go see Spider-Man again.
Yeah.
Because there's multiple versions of it that are out. So apparently there are...
Universal...
small tools.
I feel like that's a perfect. Speaking of Asteroid City.
Speaking of Asteroid City, I was making a segue there. So Asteroid City, let me start out by saying, like, this is a Wes Anderson film. And if you're not familiar with Wes Anderson, which Jen was not when we took her to the screening, I mean, she knew who he was, but she had not apparently somehow
seen any of his films.
First Wes Anderson.
Which is funny because we experienced this exact same thing previously with French Press for Robert, who had never seen. And that was probably not the right movie to start Robert on of Wes Anderson's. I think Asteroid City is actually a really good intro film to come into Wes Anderson.
I would
comparing Asteroid City versus French Dispatch, not having watched any of his other films, I would agree that Asteroid City would have been a much easier introduction to him versus what they did with French Dispatch. And I know Jen's looking at me going what?
Really?
Really?
I love how I made coffee before this, and that's where my brain was. I was like,
I asked about that, but you know,
I mean, it is about the press.
It is, which is
and
where
French.
my brain was.
About the press and French, and I'm sure somebody drinks coffee at some point.
That was close. It's been a long week, you guys. I'm very much counting on a holiday next Tuesday. Not even
already there.
That being said, let's dive into Asteroid City. A little bit of back information or backstory on this one. This one is set in the 1950s. Amidst a junior stargazer convention, which is intended to unite students and parents from all across the country and kind of showcase their inventions and their intellectual pursuits. And then a lot of stuff happens in a very short period of time in this very small, eclectic town. And I mean, I don't feel like it's a spoiler alert at this point to say, like, alien. There's an alien.
Yeah.
Oh, I have so many things to say about this alien because it is by far the cutest depiction of an alien I've ever seen ever.
It's a Wes Anderson alien.
It's a Wes Anderson alien. And it is, we're a week past the release and we're not going to dive deep into spoiler territory, but like this alien is played in air quotes because when you see it, you'll understand, by Jeff Goldblum, which I don't feel like there is a more perfect actor for that role.
Alan Tudyk could have done it.
It is the cutest.
He can do anything.
Yeah.
He can. And this is probably his cutest, in air quotes, role to date. Like that alien was adorable. More context around this. There is an alien that shows up during the middle of this kind of stargazer convention. And then what happens is the entire little convention goes on lockdown. They're basically in quarantine while the government tries to like brainwash them. Like, hey, you didn't see this. This isn't what happened. And while they're trying to kind of deal with the fallout of it, meanwhile, they all know what they saw. And they're also in this kind of quirky Wes Anderson world where they're not like super traumatized by what they saw, but they're just like going about their normal everyday lives, having their own journeys and moments and interactions with each other that are, you know, weird and wonderful. And yeah, it's a beautiful movie.
Jen, how was your first Wes Anderson experience? I need to know.
That was a movie that I saw with people in it and interesting characters and a set.
Multiple sets.
Multiple sets. Honest to God, that was one of the weirdest things I think I have ever seen on film. Now, in fairness, that is my first Wes Anderson movie. But the credits rolled, and you guys remember, I looked like to the left and right to the rest of the went, what the hell did I just watch? I'm sure if I watch other Wes Anderson movies, I will come to develop the appreciation for the acquired taste that is Wes Anderson.
You either like
Wes Anderson movie.
Yeah, I mean, it takes a certain taste for sure. And don't get me wrong, Jen, my face was not unlike yours going out of the French Dispatch. And even writing the review on that was like, I'm not even sure how to talk about this from a story point. And it aged better over time after watching it, and I thought about it, and there were, I started picking out some of the hallmarks of the things that he did, and constantly bringing in the same actors and actresses in multiple movies to come in and do stuff with him, and then seeing all of them come back, most, not all, obviously, or a few missing in Asteroid City, and playing in these different roles. It's really hard to explain.
Wes Anderson makes you feel dumb.
Right. Yes. Yeah. Yes.
He does
like,
a very artsy approach.
You're trying to
film.
write about this film, and you're like, I don't know what to say.
Yeah, I can't articulate the words that
you're like, oh my God, it's like either he's a genius or a crazy person.
It feels like I'm watching. It feels like I'm watching my mind on very little sleep, too much caffeine, and a marathon of sci-fi B movies on a Saturday.
Like,
and
that's fair.
Well,
and anime without subtitles.
Yeah,
like those really artsy animes, but without the subtitles.
Right. Well, but here's the thing. Like, and I know Emma's like doesn't agree with my interpretation of that, but that's not said in a bad way. Like, I think that's actually like in a good way, because we all have those times where we go and we binge watch through movies and shows that everyone else thinks, oh, these are really bad, but we absolutely love them because they're fun. We enjoy it. It sparks a certain nostalgia, right? So like Emma, for you, the Alien sparked your attention from 100 miles away.
I was so excited he finally did something with an alien in it. I mean, I'm always excited for Alien anything, but
and Stone Balls.
And
yes,
I'm always excited about Stone Balls.
And that's like, for me, like, I loved the Alien and the Asteroid City aspect of the film.
Right.
Where it lost me was the whole framing of it and how it's essentially a play within a film kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so Wes Anderson does some weird stuff with Bryan Cranston, and it's like, I enjoy the performances and stuff, but it's just like every time it was there, I was like, get back to Asteroid City, because that's what I want to kind of experience more of.
And that's definitely the core in the majority of this film is the actual Asteroid City, everything you're seeing in the trailer. And then we do kind of peel back a layer to learn that everything we're seeing is a play. And then we kind of see how that play came to be, the actors that are acting it, and a little bit of their story and their background. And to the point of what you guys are saying, that's not even needed here, because like the core story is so rich and so like fun and engaging that you don't need to peel back this other layer. But that is very much a quintessential kind of Wes Anderson thing to do, to kind of go deeper.
It felt very pretentious to me, where it's like, hey, let's exactly. It's like, hey, let's focus on this author who wrote this play and tell his life story, aka Wes Anderson. And it's like, it's fine. I mean, if that's your thing, it's like, if you enjoy Wes Anderson, you'll enjoy it.
That was definitely a Wes Anderson movie.
I would go so far as to say that like I've seen almost all of his movies. I think there's like one or two that I'm missing. Started, back in the 90s. And then God was in love with I've been in love with so many of them over the years. Now I'm forgetting all of their names because it's
Royal Tenenbaums.
Royal Tenenbaums was my favorite for very long. Yeah. Well, that was, now I'm trying to remember the name of his first one, which I was obsessed with.
Rushmore,
which was the one I saw in '98, which I was in love with for a very long time.
I've been told those are the two I need to watch.
I think you would love Moonrise Kingdom. That's in my top 3. I think that one is an adorable story, and that's probably my second favorite. I would actually put Asteroid City in as my favorite at this point of Wes Anderson films, just because.
Really?
Yeah, and that's That's
Aliens, Matt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean,
Mine is I love Fantastic Mr. Fox, which I feel is like the most non-Wes Anderson Wes Anderson.
And that's one of the two that I've not seen. So I need to
That's
see
really good. It's a stop motion animation film.
I mean,
And
just looking at. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, and it's basically just an animated film. It feels the least Wes Anderson-y, but it still has some of those quirks. And then probably after that is Grand Budapest for me.
That's the one I feel like I'm supposed to I would like the most.
That one's good. And
haven't
then
seen it yet.
It's everything else.
Yeah, he's got it's funny. So I'll tell this story quickly. I believe it's 11 films in total. No, that's not right. Is it right? I still don't Sorry, I just Googled Wes Anderson, and now there's way more films opening up than I feel like there should be opening up. So I went to this event, and the trivia question was, how many films has he directed? Which, if we're being specific about films, short film, feature film, I want to say it was the correct answer was 11. And I had Googled it beforehand because I was having a conversation with a couple of people at the table, and Google had told me at least 24. And I was like, this is interesting. In a day and age which AI is answering everything, including Google Bard, like answering everything. And Google is like, at least 24, when the correct answer was 11. I was like, that's pretty far off. Just saying.
They probably just tied Wes Anderson and film, and that's it.
Yeah. Well, now
So
I
it's
have more than 24 coming up now, including some that I don't even know if it's an actual film. Like, I don't know. Google also supposedly, not to get techie with this, updated algorithm yesterday, and so a lot of the stuff that you may be seeing right now that you're like, this
It's wrong.
right. It's probably because of that.
Maybe.
Also, I think part of the problem is Wes Anderson does very frequently do these kind of things within things, and then those things have names, and some of that is what Google is pulling now when I've asked how many movies he's directed.
And now everybody knows
it's like you got short films, you got commercials and promotion stuff.
Yep.
Well, you also, with French Dispatch, we had like 8 stories or something inside of French Dispatch. And so I think it's counting each one of those as a separate.
Oh, God.
Yeah. Don't Google this.
You're so crazy, Google.
It's
so
not accurate.
Now you know
why AI is not taking over yet.
No.
Not yet. We still got time. There's still hope.
That's why AI gives false results.
It's true.
Hey.
So on that note, on the, I'm trying to think of how to make the transition here from.
We're not going to Mission Impossible yet.
Well, we can't go to Mission Impossible yet, although that would be a very easy AI transition to make. Now, next we're going to. Oh man. Sorry.
We're going to whip it.
You can't tell. So next we're going to go into this fun story. I'm giving away all of these hats, and all of these hats have these little sticker things on the back, and they keep falling off, but then they keep finding new things to adhere to that they won't come off of. Such as this poster.
So whoever wins that poster gets a sticker too.
Gets a sticker.
Okay. It's a twofer.
I'm not going to pull it off because it'll rip the poster. But yes, Indiana Jones. Robert, take it away.
All right. So we officially have our 5th film in the franchise, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. Harrison Ford returns as Indiana Jones, racing against time to retrieve a legendary dial that can change the course of history, accompanied by his goddaughter. He soon finds himself squaring off against Jorgen Voller, a former Nazi who works for NASA. A lot to unpack there. A lot of familiar themes, both from the original, films of Indiana Jones and a lot of recent stuff that have covered Nazi scientists, NASA, and just sort of that whole theme. the idea behind this was the Antitheka, which was a Archimedes dial that existed in actual history. It was kind of similar to the Mayans calendar and being able to predict things like eclipses and the position of the moon and the cycles and all that kind of stuff.
But not the end of the world.
Not the end of the world. And and in this case, Indiana Jones is trying to add a level of supernatural to this item as well, similar to what they did with Crystal Skull. I will say that even the original films had a level of supernatural with all of their archaeological items, right? That's never changed. But there was just something about Last Crusade and Raiders of the Lost Ark that still felt grounded despite the supernatural element to both of those items, that Crystal Skull just threw out the window and said, "Hold my beer." And it was just bad. I personally feel like, and I'm trying to specifically avoid spoilers beyond everything I've just said, since it's just coming out in theaters. I will say, for me personally, Raiders of the Lost Ark and The Last Crusade were my top two films for Indiana Jones, and still are to this day. Temple of Doom was my least favorite, but I didn't hate it. It just didn't beat the other two for me.
You could say, of the original, because
of the original, Crystal Skull is the bottom of my list forever and always.
Yeah,
I was about to say Crystal Skull was above Temple of Doom.
No.
Old statement there.
So yeah, I personally would put Dial of Destiny up with Temple of Doom for me, and here's my justification for that. Where I dislike Temple of Doom for its story, I really liked what they did with Indiana Jones and Short Round. I felt like Dial of Destiny tried to do that, but kind of missed the mark, but was a little better on the story front. So that's where I kind of put them as a tie for me. But what do you guys think?
I have so much to say. I probably shouldn't go next.
I mean,
Matt,
I feel like that's a fair assessment. It's ranking around the same for me, and for different reasons. I enjoyed the supernatural element to it. I feel like I'm gonna go on a rant here because for me, I hated the beginning of it.
Right.
And for me, it opens with this 25-minute flashback of during, I think it's World War II.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Indy fighting the Nazis, and it's a de-aged Harrison Ford. And for me, it just didn't look good. Like, you could absolutely tell it's de-aged. It has that uncanny valley look. It looks decent. The technology has gotten better, but it's not gotten to the point where you can essentially create an entire TV episode with the focus on one guy for 25 minutes. And it took me out of it. And it's like, it made me miss the days where, we could hire an actor who looked like a young Harrison Ford. Granted,
there had been actors who had played young Harrison Ford before.
Oh, wait.
Well, yeah, exactly. The Age of Adeline. There was, I don't remember his name, but I don't know what he's doing.
Aldrin. Oh God, I can never say his name. Aldrin
Ehrenreich.
Yes.
He could play a young Harrison Ford. He wasn't the guy from Age of Adeline, but
I agree with you on the CGI, Matt. It was one of the most distracting things of the film.
And it's like, I don't know. It's just like I miss the practicality of it.
Yeah.
And so that took me out. And it's like, even we can't say our review, but like Mission Impossible has a train scene, and that to me was miles ahead better than Indy's.
Yeah.
Well, but because you don't have this layer of special effects on top of it with them trying to, I mean,
yeah,
it I'm not.
I mean,
we
you
can't-
do have the special effects,
Yeah,
but
I was like, we can't get into it because we're
it
technically
seems
not
like they
allowed
spent
to.
more time.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know,
It
but
feels
it's like, yeah, it's different. But yeah, so it's like that took me out of it, and then towards the end is when it kind of really brought me back in, where it felt like, okay, this is a classic Indiana Jones adventure, and that's where I started to enjoy it more.
Yeah.
So
Emma?
yeah,
I had a
rant
lot
over.
of problems.
I'm sure.
So I mean, the original films, you know, those were some my favorite movies as a kid. Harrison Ford was my first crush. Like, I wanted to grow up and marry Indiana Jones, like that. So it holds this very kind of near and dear special place in my heart from when I was a kid. So I'm like extra judgy, and I feel like I almost seem haterish when I'm talking about this because I hear myself talking about it. Crystal Skull was terrible. So I feel like what we have here with Dial of Destiny is light years better than that. It's so much better than Crystal Skull. But I feel like what we did in Crystal Skull, and the mistakes that they made in it, they still make a little bit here. I feel like we jump a shark at the end of this one that is not as big as the sharks that we jumped in Crystal Skull, but it's still a hop too far into the fantasy, mystical, magical, not reality realm of things. And then on top of that, we have this transition or evolution that's happened with Indy, which I do think kind of seeing him in not all of his glory, and seeing him with regrets, and seeing him kind of this weathered, worn down, kind of his spirit is not. Yeah, like I think that seeing him in this light is probably one of the most authentic pieces of the film, but that's also not what audiences want to see, and it's also taken a step too far, I would say, towards the end of the film. Again, not getting into spoiler territory, but seeing him make a decision that he knows would be catastrophic to history and everything that would happen if he made it, but yet he wants to make it, and someone else has to basically like keep him from making that decision. And that to me kind of took me out of it multiple times because I didn't feel like I was watching the Indy that I knew and loved as a child. So there was those problems. Most of my problems I had were honestly with the script. I hated every single character in this movie until probably the last third of the film. No one was likable. No one. Like everyone was like giving me reasons to like actively dislike them. So I had multiple problems. I will say at the end, the ending, again, not giving any spoilers, the ending was beautiful and perfect, and there's no better ending. Please, dear God, don't make any more of these movies, because don't mess up that ending. That was a beautiful ending.
Yeah.
But I also feel like this film franchise in a whole, there was so many opportunities along the way to do something to keep this going in a way that would have been really rad and respectable. Like even going back into the young Indiana Jones stuff in the 90s, like had that worked and had been done right, that would have been something that would have been cool to kind of interweave and stuff and keep going. Or even, you know, what they did in Crystal Skull with Shia LaBeouf, like had they'd done that right. And then like there's so many things and opportunities that they had that they kind of squandered to keep reinventing this franchise and keep it moving forward without having to have Harrison Ford kind of like, you could have spun it off into something else that could have been its own thing and could have been reinvented and cool, and kind of left Indiana Jones as the magical piece of cinema that we all knew in the 80s.
Yeah. I mean, we still have that original trilogy.
Yeah, I mean,
that's not going anywhere.
I don't think it's gone anywhere. And I think like Mad Mikkelsen, who always plays an awesome bad guy, was unlikable in this case.
But he should be. He was the villain.
He should be. But I would argue that he's not as unlikable as he should be. And that was one of the characters I felt like we didn't hate him as much as we normally would have hated a Nazi character from the previous films.
Well, that was So that was my problem with the film too, is that it takes way too long for you to get invested into everything going on, into why this dial of destiny is so important, and why everybody is going after it, and why it matters so much in these characters' motivations and stuff. Like why it essentially brings Indiana Jones out of retirement for this. And it's just like it takes way too long to get there.
Yeah.
It takes way too long to get there, and I would argue that Phoebe Waller-Bridge's character is so not likable. like the first 2/3 of the film, like she's actively like, I don't know. I put myself in Indy's shoes, and I would have been like, well, okay, you feel that way, you go see how that works out. And so, but then Indy knows that if he does that, he's screwing over the future of the world, so he can't do that. But yet, in one of the final scenes of the film, he's willing to change all of history. And so like it goes against his character's motivation.
I feel like we need to have a separate like spoiler cast
yes.
where we talk about the ending.
Oh, because I could go into
and
a
stuff.
whole
And it's like I feel
big thing.
Yeah. Actually, let's do that on our next podcast. We will dive into specifics of what
Indiana
happens
Jones.
at the end of this movie, because there is a lot to unpack here and talk about that.
I'll see it by then.
Yes.
So
But yeah.
Sounds good. I like this plan.
it's a solid
So
one.
Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, better than Crystal Skull.
Better than Crystal Skull.
That's it. That's
That's
the review. That's the line.
That's the
Better than
tagline
Crystal
right
Skull.
there.
I mean, but that is a pretty good endorsement, despite all of the issues.
I still think that it's worth people seeing in theaters because it is.
Chris Hemsworth meme, is it?
But I mean, maybe you don't have to see it in theaters, but you definitely should see it, because you don't want Crystal Skull to be the lasting impression of Indiana Jones that you have. You need something more recent than that, and this is better than that. And there is still a lot of nostalgia. It is still a fun and entertaining film to watch, even though it does have loads of issues with it. So yeah, I don't not recommend it.
It's still Indiana Jones.
It's still
It
Indiana
is.
Jones.
Sounds good to me.
Oh man.
All right then. Cool.
All right. Well, on that note, we are going to wrap up tonight. We will talk a little bit more in detail. We will go into spoiler territory with this one for our next podcast. Although before we wrap up tonight, I do want Matt to talk a little bit about a film that's coming out next week that he saw, because we won't be back for 2 weeks. I got to look up what date that is. But Matt, while I do that, tell us about Joyride.
Joyride. So yes, if you heard our Jennifer Lawrence No Hard Feelings review, this is very much in the same vein as that. It is this raunchy comedy that I am bringing it up right now. It's basically 4 friends who go on an international trip. So it stars Ashley Park, and basically she is going on a business trip to China, and she was born in China but then adopted by American parents. And so she basically grew up with her best friend, who's played by Sherry Cola. Yes, that is her name. And
Sherry or Cherry?
Sherry.
Sherry Cola.
Sherry Cola.
That's a cool
Sherry
name.
Cola.
I like that
Yeah.
name.
I
That's
like
so
it.
good.
I like it.
It is. And there's also Stephanie Hugh, who we saw in Everything Everywhere All at Once. She plays Kat. And basically it's like these friends, they go and just everything goes wrong. And they're just trying to road trip essentially, and it's crazy. And it's just absolutely ridiculous. I was laughing the whole time. I imagine the younger you are, the more you're going to get out of this film, the more you'll laugh. Older audiences might not be too thrilled about it. It is very raunchy. It is very sexual. It's got everything. And when I say everything, I do mean everything.
Is it like a female hangover? Like that's where my mind goes.
It is kind of like that. The director also wrote Crazy Rich Asians.
Which I love. That's a great
movie. I love that movie.
And so this is her directorial debut. And she does a really good job with it. It's a lot of fun.
Cool.
So comes out next week. And I highly recommend it. So, like, if you're looking for another comedy, maybe do a No Hard Feelings Joyride double feature.
That sounds like
right.
It won't be quite the Barbie Oppenheimer double feature next month, but yeah.
Well,
I highly recommend it.
We will be back on July 13th, so it won't be quite time to talk about Barbie and Oppenheimer yet. Although we'll probably, I feel like we need to do like a special podcast specifically for those two films because that technically falls in a week that we would be off. But we'll figure it out.
We'll make it work.
We'll make it work for that.
Well,
yes.
It'll be the Nerd Herd Live bombshell live stream.
Oh, I love it. Yes. So we will be back on the 13th and we will be talking about Mission Impossible. There may be a few other things that come up between now and then that we'll also be talking about. We'll also probably give there's a lot of interesting stuff potentially happening tomorrow. We'll see if it actually happens on June 30th and what happens with SAG and a potential actors strike, how that will impact the writer's strike and the deals that the studios are making. So all of these things may not seem that important, but they are going to ultimately have a significant impact on when we see upcoming films and TV shows. So many things have already been delayed, and they're going to be even more delayed. The hope is...
Or even the promotion of stuff that's coming out.
Yeah.
If the actors go on strike, they're not going to be doing any press tours or any of that stuff. No. The movies might still come out, but you won't be seeing any press tours or anything like that. So
you won't. And there will be a pretty close to actorless Comic-Con. I think the only thing that will be at Comic-Con this year, which will be the same week that Barbie and Oppenheimer come out. Apparently the writers that write for animation are under a different guild. So we're still going to see like Paramount Pictures and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles having a presence at Comic-Con, but pretty much everyone else has pulled out, probably in anticipation of what could happen tomorrow. So they may come back in with some sort of presence if a strike doesn't happen, but we're following it and we'll see, and we'll talk about it on our next podcast.
See how it goes.
Yeah.
So on that note, we didn't introduce ourselves on the way in, so hopefully you know who we are. But we'll introduce ourselves on the way out, just in case you don't. Robert?
What?
You can catch me on all the social platforms at 3F by Space or on my personal handle, Robert W. Prentice, on all those same platforms. Jen?
I'm Jen Steele with Fanbolt. You can catch me at Renlark, RENNLARK, on Twitter and Instagram. Matt?
I am Matt Rodriguez with Shakefire. I am Shakefire on all social media platforms, mostly. And then my personal Twitter, you can find me at I'm Matt Rodriguez, and on Instagram at Matthew M. Rodriguez. Emma?
Is Shakefire on TikTok?
Shh, no. I said almost all.
Almost all.
We don't do that TikTok nonsense.
TikTok is dead to all of us. Let's just say that.
You will not find me dancing on TikTok. Sorry to disappoint.
Same. I don't think any of it. Robert's on TikTok. I think
I am
the only one of us that's on TikTok.
There he is.
Yes, you can find me at Emma Loggins or at Fanbolt on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn. I don't know. It's weird to say LinkedIn in this context, but
remember Google Plus.
R.I.P.
I was on Google Plus.
So was I.
I didn't even work for Google. It was the thing.
Like made a profile for you, even if you didn't have one. I think if you had a Google account, you couldn't not have one. But yes, and another thing I want to say is if you are watching this and you live in Atlanta, Fanbold is going to be giving away early passes to Barbie and Oppenheimer. I do not know how many we will have. They will be limited. So definitely keep an eye out for that. And I think that's it. So until next time, we'll see you guys on July 13th. If you see any of the movies that we talked about tonight, let us know your thoughts. We would love to engage and have dialogue with you around them. So
let us know what you think.
Tell me why I should watch Wes Anderson.
Yeah.
All right. See you guys next time.
Bye.
Bye, guys.